The United States will not be great by its military. Its military is destroying it. This military is supposed to protect the United States. Is destroying the United States. It's putting us into a state of bankruptcy. It alienates us with the world. It causes us to behave in ways that aren't conducive to a new multipolar reality. And it puts us on the track towards wars we can't afford to fight. I mean, literally, all this technological supremacy we brag about, it costs money. And as we just proved with the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, we can't afford it. We ate up 25% of our THAAD missile stocks. Those are the missiles supposed to shoot down all the Russian missiles, the Chinese missiles, if we ever go to war against Russia and China. We just use 25% of them to help defend Israel against not even Iran's B team in terms of ballistic missile capability. Our SM-3 stocks, we haven't been producing SM-3s because we haven't been in a war like this, but they're very expensive missiles, and we just blew through them. We can't build them very fast. The fact is, any Pentagon planner, any Pentagon logistician will sit there and should be advising people, we can't sustain a high-intensity conflict against a peer-level force like Russia and China for more than a week. And then we run out of everything. And that's the reality of it. And unless it's premised upon sound diplomacy that seeks peaceful coexistence in terms that are acceptable by everybody, it has no chance of survival. And its creation will only lead to conflict that could lead to the destruction of Armenia and the destruction of Azerbaijan. And at that point in time, Putin signed off on it and said, turn it into full-scale production. Now Putin has announced that the Oreshnik is in serial production. That means that all those components that were used in the Oreshnik, instead of being pulled one of and modified, they now have a production line. So it's not just the Vodkin's machine building plant that's assembling this. It's propulsion center outside of Moscow. It's a guidance center outside of Perm. It's a warhead center outside of Chelyabinsk. They all have now production lines dedicated to this. The entire system has come together, and now it flows into Vodkinsk, gets turned into a serially produced missile, which then gets turned over to the Russian military. And the reason why I bring all this up is that if the Russians decide to unleash the Oreshnik, it's not going to be one missile. The Ukrainians are playing with fire here. And I think Putin has come out and said just the other day that if Europe or Germany participates directly or indirectly in an attack against Russia, Ukraine will be the target of Russian retaliation. So I think you will see the Oreshnik brought in, not in a single fire, but we're talking about a sustained barrage of Oreshniks that will just level Ukraine. That's the direction we're heading here. Up until now, Russia's probably held back on that in hopes that Donald Trump would do the right thing. But if Trump is stupid enough to allow ATACMS to be used, this goes back to the situation that exists in the fall of 2024 when the Biden administration signed off on this very insanity. People should remember what the reality was at that time. You will collapse like a house of cards. It's just stupid. The Armenians are being stupid. The Azeris are being stupid too, because the Azeris have to understand that while they have energy and all that stuff, Russia can take out their pipelines in a second. It's simple. Azerbaijan's not a superpower. And everybody talks about Azerbaijan able to threaten the Azeri population of northern Iran. That sword cuts two ways. Just want to remind people of that sword cuts two ways. And you want to play the ultimate game of national survival, Baku could become an Iranian city if you're not careful. So this is the stupidity that's taking place here, because the West is raising the stakes in this conflict with Russia to existential proportions together with Iran. I wouldn't have talked about Iran making a move in Azerbaijan prior to the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities. But now we're literally in a situation where the rest is threatening with Iran with its survival as a modern nation state. And when done in that light, you can't predict the future. And that's the danger here. The Zangazur corridor isn't going to be what people think it's going to be. It's not going to turn into this thing that makes Turkey the new Ottoman Empire. It's actually 43 kilometers of vulnerability. It's not very wide. American leasing doesn't provide any guarantees of security. It can be cut in a heartbeat. At the same time, he's trying to convince the Germans to become the Fourth Reich. He's not long for this world, too. And that normally that kind of behavior would get an immediate vote of no confidence. So you're telling me the Europeans know what they're doing? They don't know what they're doing domestically, let alone how to handle this out of control, narcissistic maniac, Donald Trump. Starmer pooped his pants going to meet Trump. You know what Starmer would have done? I'll tell you what Ritter would have done. Hey, Donnie, I'm on my way. Let's call up the Scottish police. We got any outstanding complaints on that property there? Yeah, noise complaints, any paperwork not done? I want you to go in and we're going to seize the palace while Trump's in it. Yeah. And then I'm going to go stay in a hotel. And as you evict the president from a place, because it's Scottish, it ain't American soil. It's Scottish. That means it's mine. Evict that son of a bitch from that frickin' place, kick him out, close down the golf course, blow it up, do whatever you want. Get his ass out of there in the street. And then I'll make him crawl to my hotel and make him come to me as I sit on a chair that's 3 inches taller than him. Yeah, Mr. President, you want to play stupid games? I can play stupid games. That's what a sovereign leader does. Actually, Hegseth did. In the aftermath of the 12-day war between Iran and Israel, Hegseth took a look at the expenditure of munitions and the drawdown that's already taken place in American stockpiles. And he said, we're not sending anything else to Ukraine. He was overridden. The man who seems to be in charge now is Mike Ratcliffe, the director of the CIA. I mean, there was a meeting where Donald Trump turned to Ratcliffe, bypassing Hegseth and saying, hey, are we going to be able to get those weapons there? No, it's all a lie. Again, everything about Trump is a lie. 17 Patriot batteries, the full complement. They don't exist. But the point is, Ratcliffe took the lead on this, not Hegseth. I believe the Pentagon continues to be staffed with professionals who their job is to lay out the reality of war. The attack on the Russian strategic bombers was a British affair run by British intelligence, maybe backed by the CIA. The CIA is a rogue entity right now, absolutely rogue, out of control. And I think what Trump is doing right now is turning to the irony here, turning to Ratcliffe into the Russian Mission Center and saying, turn up the screws. Tends to forget it was the Russian Mission Center that helped create the BS narrative that was used to weaponize against him, or at least aspects of it. And if you're a Republican, you do what the Republican whip tells you to do. If you're a Democrat, you do what the Democrat whip, because that's where your money comes from to stay elected. Money has destroyed the American democracy, destroyed it, absolutely. And what happens is you get these long-term legacy senators like Graham, who, because they own the money machine in the state that they represent, in this case, South Carolina, and because they have become so intertwined into the moneyed aspects of their national party apparatus, they're virtually untouchable because they will always get the backing of the party. They will always get the money of the party, and there's nobody who can rise up to challenge them unless they make a huge mistake. And this is what Graham's doing, but he's wrapped himself in the flag as if he's some sort of hyper-patriotic American. He's not. Lindsey Graham has sold his soul to the military-industrial complex. This is about Lindsey Graham doing that which enriches his corporate sponsors, Lockheed, Raytheon, things of this nature, Israel. He's a big pro-Israel. That's it. If you parse out Lindsey Graham's policies, they are horrible for America. And they're not grounded in reality at all. They make the world a much more dangerous place. They put the lives of the American service members who honor us with their service at risk at a higher degree than we could have. But right now, I don't think we can compete with the Chinese in Brazil. I think the Chinese have us beaten hands down. And we're just screwing it up, too, by threatening Brazil with secondary sanctions. Didn't Lula just say, if you don't want to trade with us, we won't trade with you. We don't care. And why? Because they got a Chinese trading partner right now that'll pick up all the slack and it's not theoretical. The biggest port in Peru is able to fill the Brazilian market with whatever. One of the things the United States want to do is, and the pressure they put on Brazil is, we control the Panama Canal, and all that container traffic through there. We're going to choke off the Brazilians. China went and built one of the biggest damn ports in Peru. And then they connected that big damn port with a rail line to Brazil. And so the Chinese now bring in the biggest container ships in the world, purpose-built for this port. They come into this port, which rapidly offloads the containers, loads them on trains, which then go into Brazil And it's quicker than going through the Panama Canal, cheaper, more efficient. And what it means is that China now is dominating the Brazilian economy, and there's nothing America can do to stop it. Nothing. Am I wrong? Did I get it wrong?
No, you're
okay.
totally.
I think it's good for Brazil because the Chinese, they're not perfect. Let's not pretend that anybody in this world is perfect. They're businessmen. They want to make a profit, etc. But my understanding is that their business deals are pure business deals. They don't come with moralistic strings attached. You have to sign on to this abortion policy. You have to do this. It's just straight up business. And that doesn't mean they can't negotiate an unfair deal. They do. They drive hard bargains. Donald Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. That's what this is all about. And he's frustrated because Vladimir Putin is denying him the peace prize that Donald Trump deserves. The Russians are fighting a war of attrition based on gradual gains on the battlefield designed to inflict as much harm on the Ukrainian military as possible while minimizing the harm done on the Russians. That means that this war could be a forever war. If the Ukrainians can sustain the attrition to the point that they don't break, then it just continues to grind. But then this war is also an economic war. We see that their economy is gone. They literally have no economy. It's totally subsidized by the West. And so now it becomes a political problem in the West. How, from the Russian perspective, how do we get the West to start squeezing Ukraine? And let's dig into this Russian report released by the SVR, I think today. They say some interesting things in there. I personally view this as an information operation, meaning that no intelligence service freely publishes classified information for the good of the public. They don't. Tulsi Gabbard isn't releasing the information about Russiagate because it's in the public interest. She's doing it for political purposes. She's serving her political boss. He wants it released because it's good for him. But it also is designed to bring about a loss of confidence on the West and Ukraine, to starve it economically. Because if you can start denying Ukraine the only thing that keeps their economy going, which is foreign aid, now you have economic collapse. So you have military collapse at the front, you have economic collapse, and then you're looking for political collapse. And that's the other thing that's happening right here with the demonstrations in the street. We're looking at the demise of Zelensky. He's on his way out. When all this is going to happen, I don't know. I can tell you it's happening. The Russians, they have to play a very sophisticated game here. A lot of us look at the battlefield and say, why aren't they doing more on the battlefield? Because the Russians have to be prepared for what happens if Trump does put sanctions on. If you do too much on the battlefield, you can not only solidify the resistance in Europe, but you can also alienate those who support you. Some, like North Korea, I don't think will ever be alienated. The Chinese now are more and more on Russia's side, but there's a period of time there where the Chinese were like, we really want to support you, but we're not fans of this war. And so if Russia overreacted, did too much on the military front, they alienate the Chinese. They need that foundation. So the Russians are managing all of this. Starmer, he would be the most popular prime minister in England if he sent a police raid on Trump's property in Scotland and took it over and just said, we got to go through the paperwork. We don't think you've done it right, Mr. President. Do that. We deserve it. We deserve it. America deserves it at this point in time. I hate to say that, but we do. Our arrogance is it's discrediting to us as a people, as a collective. And we have this buffoon out there acting as if he's some sort of royal king. Now, I'm all about America first. I'm an American. I want good things for America. But my God, what happened to fair play? What happened to decency? What happened to honor? What happened to integrity? What happened to the rule of law? What happened to the things we're supposed to stand for as a nation? This man represents everything. It might not cost America much to produce it, but by the time we liquefy it, put it on ships, bring it over, deliquefy, get it into the system and all that stuff, 3 to 4 times as much, as the Norwegian stuff's more expensive than the Russian stuff. And this is what Europe has signed up to. It's not going to happen, by the way. We don't have $760 billion worth of liquid natural gas products to sell to Europe. And they couldn't buy it even if we did. It's a scam, a setup, fake, fraud, a con. But this is America. We can't be great doing this. My God, I'm not sympathetic. The Europeans, they built their own ship. They inch us towards a nuclear war. all of this disguised as patriotism and making America great. It makes America weaker, because here's the other reality is that nothing Graham is proposing is going to succeed. It's going to fail dramatically. I think even Trump recognizes that if he goes out and he tries to do all these sanctions that are being threatened, it will fail dramatically. And then he'll be the one who, has mud on his face. But no, these people don't think they're helping America. Lindsey Graham knows who he's helping. He's helping Lindsey Graham. He's helping his cabal of American politicians who have sold their soul to the military-industrial complex. That's what he's doing. This isn't about helping America or making America great again. This is about weakening America for the benefit of Lindsey Graham. American politics has broken the United States of America. The politics of getting elected and staying elected has corrupted everything. There was a time when a senator, there's a reason why our founding fathers made the Senate term 6 years. They were supposed to be elected, not have to worry about continuous cycles of re-election. They could have time to think, free of the political pressure, the old wise men, now old wise women, and all this stuff. But that's not how this works, because even as a senator, you have to play the party game. You have to be raising money for the party. You have to be pimping for the party, your party. That means that never once do you ever get to do what's right for America. And I will tell you right now, there's not a senator out there that does what's right for America. Every senator does what's either right for the representatives. They only do that which will get them reelected. There's a handful of exceptions who have such a very strong base of support that they can do things. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, these are exceptions, but the vast majority of them are so insecure as to their position. And they keep looking at the upcoming midterm election. My God, how do I stay in power? What do I need to do to raise the money to stay in power? They don't read the bills. They do what the system tells them to do. And that has to be watched out in any business. But there's no strings attached when it comes to, you have to put a military base here. You have to do this. The CIA is going to come and ask you for favors here. That's how we work. We can't do a clean business deal with anybody. Brazil, every time we want to do a business with Brazil, there are strings attached to that deal. And the Chinese just now the Chinese are smart, because they understand that if you become heavily involved in the trade of Brazil, certain things happen automatically. You don't have to ask for them to happen. They just happen because it's the smart thing to do. And China will become more heavily involved in it. But the amount of infrastructure development that China can bring to bear. And when you talk about green economy, in the West, that's become a dirty word because of the way the Greens have ruined Europe. In the United States, underfunded, it gets a bad rap. China's one of the greenest places in the world right now. They are rapidly transitioning on a scale. And if you can take that and bring it to Brazil, maybe the savior of the Brazilian rainforest will be the Chinese. Maybe. It ain't going to be America. It's not going to be Europe. The Chinese seem to have a solution. And I wish it was the United States taking that lead. I'm an American. I'm proud of being an American. I wish we were the ones doing that. I know there were some people who questioned some of the intelligence, but the point is, Trump is just confused. He's just a confused man right now. These drone attacks that are taking place in Russia right now, they're all planned by the British, 100% planned by the British. The Germans are facilitating with some technologies, et cetera, but this is a British operation, and you have Trump meeting with the Brits, being briefed by the Brits. He understands what's going on. He may now decide to allow Ukraine to use the ATACMS to a greater range. I think people should be reminded. Again, I can't speak for the Russian government, nor would I ever be advising the Russian government on what to do, but one has to keep in mind that when Meshnik was fired back in November, it was a weapon system under development, meaning that the system that was fired was not a production missile. It was a missile that had already undergone certain testing. It was ready for operational testing, but it was a missile that had the booster taken from this missile, the second stage taken from this missile, the post-boost vehicle modified from this missile, and then handmade dispensing mechanisms and purpose-built submunitions. It was all sort of a pre-production missile put together. They fired it and it worked. The British may be unhappy, but the British aren't winning here. This whole experiment, this whole enterprise, this adventure that they set off on is failing, and there's no way to recover. They're literally in a fighter plane, engines are burned out, and they're in a flat spin. Their only choices are bail out or pancake and die. That's it. They're not going to recover. There was a briefing held at Congress. The CIA went around and briefed. And I ended up talking to a very senior Democrat who was present at this briefing. And I said, I know you can't give away national secrets, and I wouldn't ask you to, but the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, they all say that the CIA assessed that Russia was bluffing. I said, is that what the CIA said? Did they believe that Russia was bluffing about the nukes? And this very senior Democrat said, no. The CIA said the exact opposite, just not bluffing. That if these ATACMS are used, Russia, if the wrong targets are hit, Russia will use nuclear weapons against NATO. He said, that's not the scary part. The scary part was the Biden administration, senior Biden administration people in the briefing saying, we're ready for this. So Buchanan's briefing wasn't just theoretical. Buchanan's briefing was, we're ready to go to war. And there are people saying there was a better than 50% chance we were going to have a nuclear war at the end of last year. Better than 50% chance. The only thing that saved it was Donald Trump coming out. He gave a Time magazine interview where he said, if I'm president, I won't continue this ATACMS thing. And that allowed the Russians to say, okay, we don't need to go into nuclear war right now. We'll wait for the new president to come in and he'll end this stupidity.